I want to thank Benjamin for letting me check out this knife and for supporting us. Thank you, man. We really, really appreciate you. We appreciate everybody who supports us and helps us out through many different ways, whether it's loaning us knives, donating knives, using our sharpening services, donating money to our PayPal, coming to our lives, hitting the like button, comments, all those things. Thank you guys. We love you guys. And Benjamin, thank you. Bang! Neves Knives. I'm Jared. My lovely wife, Kara, is at work, and this is the AK-47. And like Cold Steel, this thing's pretty unique. I guess that's just Cold Steel's fashion sometimes. And the Cold Steel AK-47 is a backlock with the triad lock, so you know it's incredibly strong. S35 VN blade steel, G10 handles, and a G10, I guess you'd call this a lanyard hole, but we'll get more into that. It is a deep hollow grind that's well done hollow grind, very thin behind the edge. We'll get into that in just a second. First, let's talk about its size. It's 3.5 inch blade length and 9 inches overall, so the blade to handle ratio is definitely off, but you can clearly see that. Let's pull up a couple more big knives. Here is the Demco 8020, and you can see it is a bit longer than Demco 8020. Here's the USMC Fighter by Medford, which you can see is definitely bigger than the AK. And then here is a Microtech SOCOM Elite, one of my favorite tactical knives, because I would consider this pretty much a tactical knife in a lot of ways. And they are right about the same length. Really, really close. The Microtech SOCOM Elite. And then here's the Spyderco Manix XL. The Manix 2 XL, same length. So another great size comparison. So, you know the size of the knife. It is a 9-inch knife, 3.5 inch blade length. Now, let's just get right into the ergos, and then we'll get into cutting and sharpening and everything. The ergos on this is pretty unique, because you can see all the finger twirls this thing has, but it actually is pretty comfortable back here. Very, very comfortable. And then you see how it has this angle back there. And if you look at kind of like how a hand kind of does this, how it kind of has that L shape, it kind of sits right in that crook of my hand. So it winds up being very comfortable, even though it has this corner right there. Now, the one thing it does do is it does kind of push you back far away from the blade, kind of. Now, you can get up there like that if you want. And just use this whole part right here with your 3 fingers, 4th finger up there. So you can use it like that, especially for push cuts. But it kind of hooks your finger right there when you are back here. So for, say, stabbing or puncturing something, this thing does kind of create leverage in your palm, But for cutting, it also works really good because even though you're back far, you feel like you have a lot more leverage just because of the shape of the handle. Now, spinning it around like this is a little different. You do have the spot right there that you're kind of getting poked on, but it's still okay. In this direction. It still winds up working out somewhat good. Reverse grip, not so much. You could definitely do it. You can get by. I did do it a couple times and it worked out just fine. But, it's not the most comfortable. But you see how my hand kind of lays. It's kind of just this point right there that kind of really blocks me. But let's talk about cutting with it because it cuts so good. This thing for slicing. Slice cuts, push cuts, it just cuts like a champ, man. It blazing through, anything you throw at it. Behind the edge thickness ranges between a little under 15 thousandths up to, 17 thousandths. It does taper a little bit, but you can say around 15 thousandths, give or take. And just a monster at cutting. Beautiful hollow grind. The blade geometry is very, very well done. I want to talk about that here in a second because this is a hard use knife, 15 thousandths behind the edge, and it has a deep hollow grind. So, you know, what's up with that? A lot of times when you see a hard use knife, you know, it's supposed to be really thick. You know, the blade geometry is always horrible on hard use knives. Not in this example. It is great. Amazing blade geometry. The utility cuts, it works. Okay, you do have a drop point blade, which does, you know, it's kind of a jack of all trades blade shape that does, you know, pretty much work for just about anything. And it is a beautiful, well done, great drop point. It works really good, and you can do utility cuts with it without really too much of an issue. It's more of the handle making it a little difficult more than the blade shape, just because you're kind of, you know, trying to grab it in ways to where you can lock on and get the best leverage from it, and you don't get the best leverage into the utility cuts, but it does work. It does work. It does get you by, and you shouldn't have really too much of an issue with utility cuts. Very strong, durable tip, yet it's acute enough for you know, for the utility cuts, but it is a strong tip. Not a brutal strong tip, you know, to where you're going to be, you know, prying with it like crazy, but it's reasonably strong. It's a tip I would not worry about, to be honest, with, you know, stabbing things or, you know, anything like that. I wouldn't worry about it one bit. Coating seems to hold up pretty good. I think it's a DLC. I forget exactly what the coating is. You know, this is a review. I should be the one telling you, but it seems to be holding up really good. No problems with it. Cold Steel's coatings are, you know, I've always seen that they're really good. Now it does like get fingerprinty and, you know, leaves like marks on it if it's dirty, but besides that, it's nice and slick. It's not tacky feeling, so it's easy to clean, very easy to clean. The choil, we'll get into that here in a little bit. The texturing on the G10, not overly aggressive, but also it is still enough to where you can kind of file your nail on it. You know, it's not too aggressive though. It's pretty comfortable in the hand. Let's talk about this clip, and then we'll talk about sharpening with it, because I was pretty surprised on this S35VN. So this thing does have some, what you'd call a wave feature. You know, we'll talk about the action also here in just a second. The wave feature, I guess, you know, it's the thumb disc, but the thumb disc works as a wave feature. Now, in the pocket, you know, it's rather big. I don't know why they put these grooves right here. It doesn't really add to anything. It really doesn't benefit you in any way, not anything that I've seen. So I don't know why they have all this, but it's there and it gets kind of annoying. The clip does work, and it does work good for a wave feature, but it also, if you don't want to use the wave feature, you do have to get used to taking it in and out of the pocket. The wave feature will kind of get caught up. You do have this hook right here. It's not like you can just grab this hook and pull. But if you want to use the wave feature works great. But if you try to grab the hook right here and pull it out, you know, the blade can't come out. So it'll just get stuck. So that is one way you can kind of pull it out without using the wave feature, is kind of just hook it, you know, and you kind of rotate it out of the pocket a little bit, you know, or you can just grab it. You know, you kind of get used to knowing when it's catching in your pocket and when it's not. But, you know, if you did want to use the wave feature, you want to pinch the sides right here when you yank it out and make sure that this runs along the seam of your pocket closest to your hip. Drag it up through the, you know, the seam of the pocket towards your hip, and it will fly out. But the clip, you know, it's a little tight, which you can always loosen. So it does kind of tear up the pants a little bit, especially because you got these little ridges right there that just adds to the texture that it already has. So Not the best clip in my opinion. I never really have too big of an issue with Cold Steel's clips, but it also hangs out of the pocket a lot. Now it has the wave feature, so it kind of makes sense. It's supposed to be a tactical knife where you can get it out and get it into action extremely fast. And hey, I can respect that. That's cool. So if that's your thing, then, you know, more power to you. I mean, they'd be the fastest deploying knife in that sense. I don't think that taking a knife out and deploying it is much slower, but obviously it's going to be a little bit faster to be able to use a wave feature. Let's talk about the action now. So it does have this thumb disc. Works best as just a slow roll, in my opinion. You just kind of grip it like this, get your thumb under it. You got to clear this corner right here, so you want to drag it around. Now, yes, you can flick it, but since it's a backlock, you have this resistance right here that always tries to shut it, and you got to get it past here, then kind of get the leverage. So if you just try to flick it, it's not gonna work. You're gonna have to add a little flick of the wrist. That was a reverse flick, pushing up, getting it to here, and then flicking, basically. Same thing with the thumb flick. That's why I said, you know, it's just best for a slow roll. Now, unlocking it, you push the back lock, let this part of the ricasso or the finger choil right here hit your finger on the way down. Then you can slap it shut, so you can swing it shut like that. You can pull it shut with your thumb. Some people would just close it two-handed, but it is safe to shut one-handed, especially once you get used to it. You know, the backlock does have a strong tension to it. Nice big stop pin. I love seeing giant stop pins like that. It just, you know, adds to the strength, because this is going to be the strongest locking mechanism that we have, arguably. And it is very, very solid. Smidgen, side to side, also extremely strong. I mean, this thing is just, it's very, very strong. Also, I forgot to say, the clip is reversible from right to left, because this is going to be a knife for right-handed people or left-handed people just as easy. So it's cool that they did allow that. Now you see back here by where the lanyard hole is, it does have like a spot where you can hit things, and you know, I would imagine it works pretty decent. I did hit a table a couple times besides this one, you know, and kind of checked it to see how it felt in my hand, and it does work pretty good. You do feel pretty locked in, so you could use it, I suppose. It is a plastic or some type of G10 or a polymer or something like that, some type of plastic, but it works. So it's weird. It looks weird. It's obnoxious. You know, in the hand it's big, and you know, in the pocket and everything else. But you know, if that's the type of knife that you're willing to carry and use, and you want something to be able to bang on stuff, you know, you might need it on a construction site, you know, to tap a 2x4 over. You know, maybe your hammer is, you know, across the room or something. I don't know. So in some ways it might work out beneficial to you, and you can think of other ways to use it, I'm sure. You know, I'm sure you guys have creative minds. Now, sharpening, I'm going to voice over the sharpening, because there are some things I want to explain there, because I did have to sharpen this up a certain way. Well, it's a pretty common technique when sharpening, freehand sharpening a drop point. So I think it was good to put in here. I also want to say this thing sharpened up beautifully. I'm very impressed with this S35VN. We'll talk about that. So let's get into sharpening. So when I started sharpening this, I noticed right away that I wasn't hitting the back of my bevel through the belly of the blade. So I quickly realized that I had to change the way I was going across the stone. So I started out by just going across the stone and raising my elbow, and I realized I had to tilt back a little bit as I was going across, and I'm going to show you the difference between the two. So this is what I started having to do, was as I'm going across the stone, I rock my wrist back as I lift. So that helps get the back of the bevel. So instead of doing that, going straight up with my elbow or my wrist, I rotate my wrist back like that. And it, worked out perfect. It hit the back of the bevel and there was no issues. And that's how I continued to sharpen this knife or this blade shape. And that happens a lot with big belly drop points. So that's why I wanted to make sure I showed it in this video, because you're going to run across blade shapes where you have to do one or the other. So as I progressed through my stones, I started realizing, man, this thing was really taking a fine edge, and I normally don't go up this high. Sometimes I do with S35, but usually the only time I do go up to this high of a stone for these venev diamond stones, or any stone with S35 yen, is if it has a good heat treat. So I'm thinking it has a pretty good heat treat on it. The edge came out very fine. Now it could have to do with just the angle and the thinness and a lot of those things too. It could, but regardless, the edge came out very, very fine, and it did good at a bit of a higher grit. Not a mirror, but a bit of a higher. Now, after I was done with that last stone, I just knocked the burr off, because I did have a pretty good burr on it. And a lot of times you don't get really much of a burr when you get up to the high grit venev stones, but I did. So I knocked it off with this ceramic stone from Lansky, and you can see right here without stropping it or anything. And I did wind up stropping it after, but just fresh from the ceramic, bam, right through paper towel. This thing is very sharp. I did strop it, and here it is through some paper. Now, let's talk about some bad things really quick, and then we'll finish up with like an overall thought. So, one thing that's bad is this choil area. It doesn't really make sense to me. When I look inside this knife, I do see a stop pin right up there. You can see it all the way up there, but it doesn't line. I don't think it lines up with this. It looks like it lines up right about, like somewhere in this area, like right there or something. So I'm not sure why they put that like that. Unless if there's another stop in there and I just can't see it, I'm not sure. Maybe it does stop there, maybe it doesn't. If the, the reason why they would leave this nub here so you don't sharpen into this little spot right there. But if that spot's not the stop, maybe it is, and maybe I'm wrong about this. But either way, I would have liked to have seen that done a little bit better. Now, the more you sharpen up the blade, it is going to leave this hanging down while the blade goes up or the edge goes up the blade. So, I'd like to see that done better. Next thing, I'm not a massive thumb disc fan. This does work out just fine, but I would have rather seen thumb studs or a hole or something like that. But a lot of people do like discs and like the wave, so it's not really too much of a complaint on the structure or anything like that. Next thing, like I was saying, and this has to do with the wave thing again, I'm not a big wave fan, so I'm going to be biased in this area. The clip is so far down. I know, yes, you have a lot to hang on to yank it out of your pocket for that wave feature, but in the return, you have a lot hanging out of your pocket. So I'm not a huge fan of that. I wish the back lock was just a little bit more comfortable. I wish they put a Boyd dent You guys always make sure to tell me that's what it's called. A little dent right here to make it comfortable. And it also helps so you don't press it. You never have to have a problem with pressing this one, but it would help for comfort. T6s, I'd rather see T8s. And then one other thing that is pretty significant to me, this is just my opinion though, the stop pin. I love that it's a massive stop pin, but it is not in any liners. It's just straight into the G10. Let me just pull that off. So you see how how it comes out right there and on this side, and so it's just in there. And I would have rather seen it in a liner of some sort, not just straight in through G10. Now, I know that brings down the weight and everything, but maybe they could have just added one piece of metal there. I don't know. It just seems like you have so much strength. Now, let me just say this. G10 is extremely strong. So I have no doubt that this thing isn't, the strength of it isn't just obscene. But I don't know, just a thing that, if you're going to have a backlock and you're going to have all that strength, have the stop pin go into metal, not plastic. But that's me. Other than that, the lock locks up solid. You can hear how solid it is. I love that crack of the lock. It really locks up good. And all in all, the knife is super useful. The geometry is amazing. And then this is a hard use knife. Yet, as you can see, great blade geometry. To me, this is a beautiful thing because this is what I'm advocating for so much. You can have a hard use knife and still have great blade geometry. Now, also from the factory, their edge was like 15 or like 17 degrees per side. That's amazing. So they not only gave you thin behind the edge and gave you a deep, tall hollow grind that just cuts beautifully, they also gave you a nice laid back edge to give you great cutting performance. So it's not like they were saying, oh, this is a strong lock, the knife's really strong, so we need the blade to be, 200 thousandths thick spine with 30 thousandths, thick behind the edge, with the sharpening bevel at 30 degrees. They didn't have to do that. And it's a beautiful thing when you get this because you got strength plus cutting performance mixed together. I love that. I love that. So that's amazing to me. That's the best part about this knife, in my opinion, next to that S35DN that's sharpened up like a dream. It's sharpened up so good. It is so sharp. Now, I honestly think I probably could have put a full-blown mirror edge on there. I almost wanted to just because, but I normally don't like taking S35 that high, and I think even if it did take it, it would only take a few cuts, and it probably wouldn't have a lot of bite. And this thing is so sharp. It's very, very, very sharp. So I think this is for this S35 on this grind and, this heat treat and everything. I think it was the edge is perfect where it's at. I normally don't go up this high for sharpening or up this high of a grit for S35DN. So it is up a little bit higher than I normally would go. We will definitely insert some nice close shots of the edge because it came out really good. I'm not going to say it's my best edge ever, like with the angles and everything like that. It is a little off from one side to the other, just a tiny bit, completely my fault. And it's just a small bit. The tip matches up really good. Everything lines up really good. Just one spot right here is a little bit bigger than this side. Not by much. It's a small amount, but, it is a thing. But the type of edge it took, I'm very impressed with for S35DN. I love seeing. I would guess that this has a good heat treat. I would just guess that right off the bat. So that's a beautiful thing in my opinion. Now this is going to be a knife that's for a specific type of person, whether for self-defense, fighting, you know, some type of tactical knife possibly work. I could see it being a good construction knife. I could see it being a knife that, you know, in some ways, you know, I personally wouldn't carry it for construction, but I could see people doing it. And then, like I said, for tactical self-defense uses, it seems like it would be a very, very good knife for that type of application, you could say. It's definitely going to have a lot of leverage in a lot of ways. So, and it's going to be hard to get out of your hand. You got the reverse side for hitting things. So it's definitely good in that type of scenario, you could say. So, awesome. It's an awesome knife. It's well done. And it surprised me. It definitely surprised me because it's so unique. It is out there. It is, you know, a bit crazy, but it's well done crazy. So it's okay to have crazy if it's done right. A lot of times crazy isn't done right. And in this instance, it's actually done right. You know, when you get it in your hand, you might think it feels a little obnoxious, but in use, you end up realizing it works. It works good too. You know, aside from the pocket clip thing, you know, I'm not a big fan of that, but for what it's worth, yeah, it's pretty awesome. I love you guys. Thank you guys for watching. Benjamin, thank you for letting me check so much stuff out. I appreciate you. Thank you for supporting us. Peace.